invite the kids to come on up. I'm going to be asking for some adult volunteers too. This will be a participatory kids message today. So first I have to set this up. We're going to be talking about saints today. Saints is one of those words that we pretty much only use in the church, right? You wouldn't talk about saints with your friends at school or something like that. They wouldn't know what you were talking about. Do you know what a saint is? Yeah, a saint is someone who tries to live out their faith in Jesus Christ and who teaches that faith to others. So a saint is someone who loves and serves other people in the name of Christ and who teaches that faith and passes it on. Ooh, there's a bug. Yeah. And passes it on to the next generation. So here I made some pieces of paper that have different generations on them, and they're a little bit arbitrary because the scholars don't agree which generations, where the lines are exactly. But I need someone from what's called the GI generation to be brave and come on up here. If you were born between 1901 and 1924, come on up here. Is there anybody here? Nobody here who was born in... Oh, my mom is in that generation. She was born in 23. She's 90. But nobody's here today? All right. Okay, do we have anyone from the silent generation? 1925 to 1945. Come on up, be brave. Come on, yay. We're going to give a hand to everybody. And this is yours. You stand on this one here. Silent generation. I need a baby boomer. We need to make more room for our silent generation. We've got several. These kids, these are our saints from the silent generation. How about a baby boomer or two? 1946 to 64. Somebody in there? I could stand in that one too. You know? And then we have Gen X. Anybody between 1965 and 85? 65 and 85. Teague, that's you. Yeah, come on. And then Generation Y, 1978 to 1990. We got any of those? 78 to 90, anybody? That's it. Shannon, there you go. And then Gen Z, 1991 to today. That's all our kiddos here, right? All of you guys are 1991 to today. So these guys are all saints. You are all, every single one of you. So why do I have a blank piece of paper here after today? And I have a blank one at the other end before 1901. Anybody know why? Because before any of us were alive, there were saints in the church. And after, there are saints who haven't been born yet. Right? So we are all God's saints. Let's have a hand for these saints who came up here today. They're great. Thank you so much for coming. So kids, remember, this week I want you to remember to share the love and that you can teach other people about Jesus. And when you do that, then you're being a saint too. Okay? Thanks for coming up. Sunday, my thoughts inevitably turn to three of the newest saints in heaven. Three men who were beloved members of this congregation. Les Zare, Bill Walters, and Hal Pye. Now, none of these three men were perfect, because as I just told the kids, that's not the definition of a saint. None of us are perfect. But in the truest sense of the word, they were saints, because the measure of a saint isn't perfection, but rather a life of faith and loving service to others in the name of Christ. Les reflected God's love in his relationships with his family and in his devotion to his colleagues and students, in whom he sought to instill a passion for teaching and learning. Bill also lived out his calling as a teacher, in his case, teaching music and anthropology. And based on the many comments written by his former students on one of Wittenberg University's web pages, it's pretty clear that Bill deeply influenced the lives of many people through his encouragement and his friendship. Our most recent addition to the Heavenly Host, Hal, was a man who deeply loved and enjoyed his family, his friends, and God's good creation. In the obituary for Hal, his family wrote this remarkable comment. He never said a bad word about any human being. Wow. How many of us can say that? I know I can't. I can't help thinking about this tribute to Hal's character in light of what Jesus says to his disciples in our gospel lesson for today. But before I flesh out that connection, bear with me for a bit while I set the scene for you. Jesus has just come down from the mountain where he's been praying. And this was his habit before he would make a big decision. He would go off by himself, or go up the mountain or to a lonely place, and he would pray. As soon as he arrives back on the plain, Jesus chooses from among the larger group of disciples the 12 who will become his closest companions. So by the time we meet up with him in today's gospel lesson, he's beginning to teach his disciples what it will mean to follow in his way. Now, besides the 12, remember there are other disciples present, and then in addition to this broader group of disciples, Luke tells us that there are also crowds of people who've come out to hear what Jesus has to say and to be healed by him. So it's pretty safe to assume that many among this wider group are eavesdropping on Jesus' teaching. And Jesus gets right to the point. He lays out for his audience the great reversal that is God's plan for the life of the world. It strikes me he sounds a lot like his mother, Mary, when she sang the Magnificat, because he goes on to declare God's blessing on the poor, the hungry, those who mourn, and those who are hated because they are his followers. In short, Jesus makes it clear that in God's kingdom, the blessed ones are those who are at the bottom of the heap of humanity. Now, unlike Matthew's Beatitudes, which are a little bit more familiar to most of us, Luke's version includes a series of woes that parallel the blessings. And in these woes, Jesus indicates that those who continue to live self-centeredly and callously will receive their comeuppance. Indeed, they will come to know what it's like to be deprived when the great reversal comes about. One way to think about these woes might be to view them as a call to repentance. At any rate, the contrast between the blessings and the woes Jesus pronounces reveals the gap between the brokenness of our human existence and God's vision for healing and reconciling this world which God so loves. By pointing out this contrast, Jesus is trying to teach his would-be disciples that those who follow him must catch a glimpse of God's vision and learn a new way of seeing and being in the world, a way that's illumined by the light of faith. In Ephesians, Paul puts it this way: those of us who follow Jesus must come to see with the eyes of our heart enlightened. I love that phrase. With the eyes of our heart enlightened. Because only when we see it in that way will we come to know the hope to which Christ has called us.